I want to begin tonight with the breaking news that the FBI has been questioning at least one of the people charged in the Capitol riot about his possible connections to members of Congress. The investigative reporter who got his hands on that transcript is Scott MacFarlane of NBC News 4 in Washington, and he joins me now. Scott, what have you found?
Hey, Zerlina, good evening. Let's start with that latest video. And those videos are tough to watch and tough to listen to as well. The audio, so guttural, so visceral. The feds say the most recent video shows Thomas Webster of New York, a retired NYPD officer and a former U.S. Marine. So they're showing in this video, they say, a police officer attacking another police officer. He's pleaded not guilty, but he is jailed pending trial. But we got a copy of the FBI interview with Thomas Webster. 61 pages, and a few things stand out. And you mentioned a few of the top lines. He was questioned about any potential ties to the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, or the Proud Boys, the far-right groups that are at the epicenter of this sprawling January 6th investigation. But he was also questioned about whether he knew any members of Congress, any congressional staff, or any Capitol Police. To all those questions, he said no. But a former federal prosecutor here in D.C. says that is indicative of an investigation into possible complicity by members of Congress. The former federal prosecutor calls this a very significant set of questions by the FBI. And Zerlina, the answer to all of them from this defendant was no, but it's hard to believe they weren't asking this of other defendants as well.
Well, that's actually my next question. Is this something the FBI is just asking Mr. Webster, or does it seem like this is a standard line of questioning that they utilize for anyone that they're questioning who was involved in January 6th?
Without any equivocation, Zerlina, the focal point, the most serious charges in this investigation are against the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, and the Proud Boys. They're accused of conspiracy, of plotting and planning ahead of January 6th, of having, in some cases, encrypted communications, having radio devices, military gear. No surprise at all. They'd be asking defendants if they have any knowledge of or links to those far-right groups. Those are the most serious charges. Now, about members of Congress, there's obviously a lot of talk about what did members of Congress know. It seems intuitive to ask questions about it. It's noteworthy this defendant said no, but we don't know yet what the other defendants have been asked. We haven't yet seen their transcripts. Zerlina.
The FBI also was asking about members of Congress and congressional staff. Obviously, there has been reporting about some members of congressional staff potentially taking eventual rioters on tours. What do we know about the questions that are being posed to these folks about ties to members of Congress? Is that something that's coming up a lot? Is it just for Mr. Webster?
So far, just for Mr. Webster, in part because that's the only transcript we've seen, and his answer was no. But the former federal prosecutor here in D.C. says it's likely the feds have phone records for a number of these defendants. So if there were calls to anybody who's under that umbrella of suspicion, feds may know it already. So getting the question on the record is important just to check the veracity of defendants. So again, it would be no surprise if we saw that question asked of other defendants, but we do know it was asked of this defendant, Thomas Webster of Orange County, New York.
The other question is ties to Capitol Police officers. Is that something that's also being included in standard questioning for folks, or was that specific to Mr. Webster? That seems interesting considering he is an NYPD, a former NYPD officer himself.
Yeah, there is that parallel. He's a former police officer. What's more, Zerlina, he was a former City Hall-based police officer during the Rudy Giuliani administration in New York City, and sometime before and sometime after former Mayor Giuliani. There is that question. You're former police. What can you tell us about police? But something else jumped out on this record. They asked him about what they say is shown in that video, him striking an officer. And he says the officer appeared to instigate it that day, pushing blame back at the police officer he's accused of attacking with a flagpole, with his fists, and then toppling him over. It's a striking defense. We'll see what happens when he appears in court next week to try to secure his release from jail.